Welcome to Production Value Matters, the business event podcast, brought to you by Byrne Production Services. Here, we explore the different ways business events can bring value to your organization, the latest technological advances in the event space, as well as providing you with actionable strategies to make a business event a success. Let's create an exceptional event experience.
Welcome to another episode of Production Value Matters, the Business Events Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Sarah James, Director of Sales for Live Nation Special Events in Austin and San Antonio. Renowned for her strategic expertise and dynamic leadership in event execution, Sarah has a proven track record of surpassing sales targets and elevating event experiences. She's here to share her insights on booking live event entertainment for your business events. Sarah, welcome, and how are you today?
Thank you so much, Matthew. I'm doing great.
Thanks. So how did you get to where you are today? Can you talk to me a little bit about your career and your background?
Yeah, a lot of hard work, a lot of putting one foot in front of the other. Like many people of my generation, I did not go to college for hospitality or events related. I worked my way up. I spent many years on the hotel side as a director of catering and conference services for several hotel brands. The pandemic happened, everything changed, and things ended up working out for the best because I found a home again back at Live Nation, doing special events in our concert venues for San Antonio and Austin. Some similarities to what I did in hotel world, but a lot of differences, and it's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. So who's been your favorite live performance at an event and why?
You know, I am going to say Neptune's Core. This is actually a band that I booked for South by Southwest. We did a showcase partnership with an agency that brought talent from all over the United States. They were a special favorite of mine because these are a group of young girls, not a one of them over 17, that got up on stage and owned it. The main singer just belted out with this gravelly voice and emotions like she had experienced 50 years of living. It blew me away. And although they're not very well known, they're based out of Chicago. Although they're not very well known, to me, it was just special because they were able to, with our partnership, not only come together down to get to Austin and South by Southwest, but get some new exposure for the first time. It was a lot of fun. I've also seen in that same week in South by Southwest, we did a partnership with Spin Magazine and we did Gary Clark Jr. So kind of from one end of a not known, but a really special performance to, Grammy winner performance. Both of those stand out in the last year for me.
Excellent. And so could you walk us through how you align the selection of live entertainment with the broader strategic goals of an event?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, live entertainment, obviously working with Live Nation is a big component of a lot of the events that we do. It brings energy into the room. I love a good DJ. I love a good dance floor, but to me, nothing beats a live band. There's events where we do everything from a Frank Sinatra serenade on Riverwalk Terrace, which is at our Aztec event here in San Antonio, all the way to the heart of Austin, really bluesy kind of rock stuff at my Scoot In or my Emos venues. To me, it really, if you get the right entertainer, it can expose your attendees to something brand new, especially if they're looking for something that really comes from the area. I mentioned Austin, that sound, that kind of bluesy rock, very popular in that area. Several artists do it really well. Eric Tesmer, the Peterson brothers. And then in San Antonio, people are looking for that kind of Tex-Mex mix. So we brought on the Palacio brothers, another local band.
And so how do you ensure that entertainment not only fits the theme, but also enhances that overall objective of the event?
It's understanding a lot of what the meeting planner, the event planner that I'm working with is looking for. And I work from all the way to experienced event professionals that are maybe putting on a social event or a corporate event that might be able to describe that objective a little bit easier. Destination management companies would be the same. But sometimes I'm working with planners who they got elected to have, to be in charge of their awards gala or their holiday party, and they don't know exactly what the objectives might be. So sometimes it's just getting to that point of understanding, is it this really a group that wants to get up and dance and we need something that's going to energize the crowd in that way? Is it mainly more background music and you want the event to be a networking event, for example? I can throw up a great band in a day that's going to be loud and pumping through the whole venue. But if your objective is to get people to mix and mingle and network, that's not the right move, right? We're going to need to pull that back and do something that's a little bit more background music. So I've been doing events a long time. So I can usually get to that heart of like what the neat objective is for each event, just depending on what's going on. And I make my recommendations from there.
Okay. So in your recent experiences, what are some of the trends that you're seeing emerge about live entertainment at corporate events?
I would say it's basically an increase. There was a lot of movement into just going with background music for DJs. Live music is something that people really enjoy experiencing. And one of the things that when people are looking to put an event on, that they really are wanting it to seem authentic to that area, as I mentioned, that's a big thing, is they really want to like dig into that culture. I see there's some great bands that I really call, they're specialized in events. And so these are the bands that can get people up out of their seats. They're going to appeal to a wide range of audiences. And in addition to maybe on one end where you have somebody who's wanting to pull into the culture of the city, to the opposite, like maybe a social event, and they're really just wanting a crowd pleaser. So those are two that I really look at when we're talking about trends, because it's usually one or the other. The big band sound is really popular right now as well. And so that really falls, again, like we're doing a social event and I'm looking for an entertaining band that can just, come in and get the crowd going. It's a great way to go.
And so are you also seeing a trend, like the whole events industry has, after the pandemic where everything was digital and everything was sort of online. And now that we're sort of getting back to live, is there more of an impetus on event planners and organizers to what we keep talking about in the industry is everything has to be an experience. And so are you seeing a trend of a higher demand moving away from the DJ and going into, look, we have to put on a concert, because it's not just, presentations and AGMs and the CEO on stage, like that has to still be a portion of our program. But are you seeing a trend of more demand on like higher sort of tier bands, because they're like, what's the draw? What's getting me to fly to Vegas or fly to San Antonio to go and attend this event? And is that trend increasing to say, hey, we're going to have U2 play, right?
Absolutely. And everyone's looking for something unique. They really want something that is going to stand out from what has been done in the past. And live entertainment is a great way to do that. We had, and sometimes it's multiple acts. I had a big blowout corporate reception a number of months ago, and we probably had 4 different types of live entertainment, and that was just the musical acts. That wasn't even including the ambient entertainers and the living statues and the robots and all those kinds of things that we do. But one of the things that they did is they actually brought in a really cool drum line that was like a hymning drum, and they did the CEO actually came out and performed with them at the very beginning. And that was just such a blockbuster type of moment where people got really excited to see them interacting with the music and seeing their CEO just come up there and be silly. I know a lot of meeting and event planners, live entertainment is the one area that they might feel the less confident. I realized that in the last couple of years that I've been with Live Nation, they the production side, they might know how many gallons of coffee to order for the meeting, but when it comes to booking live bands, there's a bit of a knowledge gap in confidence level. So sometimes they go back to the well and just book the same bands over and over again. But when they come to a Live Nation venue, we have the contacts and the expertise to be able to say, like, hey, here's a whole host of other bands that we could talk about that would really bring in a new element. And as you mentioned, it's all about the experience. You want everything to come together, from the decor, sound, the lighting, the food and beverage, that custom cocktail, all the way down to the right fit of live entertainment for your group.
Mm-hmm. So what are the key factors you consider when deciding between different entertainment options? So, put yourself in the role of this meeting planner that we just mentioned might have a little bit of a experience or knowledge gap into how to program appropriately. We mentioned a little bit of understanding objectives, but are there other factors that sort of key into that?
Budget. Budget is a big one. A lot of people get some sticker shock when we start talking about live entertainment. Unless, if they've been in a big tier city already, then they know going into the gate, how much it's going to cost them. But sometimes I'm planning something a little bit more on a local level, and maybe they don't realize $5,000 is not a big budget for a band. You can get some live local entertainment a lot. And this is in Austin, where there's a plethora of great local bands, but it's expensive for them to, you've got multiple people that are in the band. It's expensive for them to haul the equipment away. So cost is the first thing that we look at. Now, if you're wanting to bring in a little bit of a bigger act and you're working with a budget that's $10,000 or more, and we have resources within our company that actually, like Nesty Live is a subdivision within Live Nation that actually helps event planners book these types of business. Plug them if you're ever looking for some help with this kind of stuff. I mean, obviously we have contacts from Beyonce on down is what we say. But the first thing we look at is, do they understand the budget that it's going to take to bring in a band? The next part is the technical actual production piece. The language of doing, linens and putting together the right menu and all that kind of stuff, again, is a little easier for people. But when we're looking at, technical aspects that on the production, also called audio visual side of things, they really appreciate somebody with knowledge who can guide them through, because not every venue has what a band needs in place, ready to go. So there might be, if you're bringing in a band that has a lot of needs, you might need to bring in some additional production into the venue in order to accommodate that. If you're at a concert style venue, you're going to have a production manager there in addition to your salesperson that'll walk you through that. But if hey, I want to do this cool event in this warehouse in the middle of nowhere, there's a lot of resources you're going to need to bring in.
Yeah. It's the challenge that, we talked about that sort of knowledge gap when it comes to entertainment. And I think you're absolutely right on the production and technical side. I mean, as a production company, we're exposed to that challenge more often than not. And, just from the understanding of what the difference between backline and PA and instrumentation and monitor techs and those kind of requirements, a lot of times people are trying to create that concert feel like that you would get in, say, a Live Nation venue, but in a ballroom in a convention center, right? And understanding that those sort of band requirements, which, I think from a production point of view and perhaps from your side of things as well, being the entertainment person, that, these are sort of things that we take for granted, but then there's that knowledge gap in the event planning side of things, saying, oh, I'm going to have a band, how big of a stage? And then when I mention the word, okay, who's providing the back line?
Right.
Every once in a while, their eyes glaze over and they go, what is backline? Right. So, you've given us a great idea for a blog post to follow up this episode. So,
there you go.
How do you cater and gauge diverse entertainment preferences for event attendees? I mean, sometimes at an event we have, C-suite all the way down to, frontline sales, right? So their entertainment preferences and needs can be very different. Like, how are you managing that?
Each event has its own unique challenges. And the one you mentioned, as far as like, hey, we want to get this crowd excited, but this crowd is super diverse. A lot of times the first answer would be going to those bands that are real experts on variety. I think of Emerald City out of Dallas and Danny Ray out of Houston. They do a really good job with a cachet of music that's going to be multi-generational. That's a good start. The other thing I would also sometimes challenge my meeting and event planners on is maybe you'll do something that is a little unexpected. You might be exposing somebody to a new band or style of music that maybe they're not super familiar with, and they can just get excited that they're, exposed to something new. So I think it's great to know about that live entertainment. That's great. Going across the board from your brand new salesperson, 27, to the CEO at 57, and they find something for everybody. But don't be afraid to really step out of that box and do something fresh. I always like mention the local thing is great, because if you are going to any city across the United States, there's a lot of meeting and event planners that want to do, like, you want local food and beverage. You want something that is really feels like LA, that feels like Chicago, that feels like Atlanta. And those are the opportunities to look and say, what kind of music is known in this area, and you're going to do everything from, gosh, see, if you go to Seattle, so many great local bands. It's such like a heart of like the rock scene, all the way to doing Zydeco in Louisiana. So that's, there are your safety nets with bands that can do it all, but don't be afraid to do something a little different.
Yeah, and to touch on the story you just told about the the CEO sort of joining in the performance, right? I think a lot of people can be surprised at how, and I'm just thinking of my dad, who is British and very buttoned up, but he loved country music. Like, but when I was a teenager and I discovered this, I was very, very confused. But at the same time, I feel like there is that default decision that, oh, it's, mostly a C-suite, mostly sort of above 45. We should do sort of conservative music or entertainment choice. But then, you're sitting with the CEO after the event, and they're like, I really, really would have loved a punk band. And they go, what? What are you talking about? Okay, cool. Like next year, I guess that's what we're doing. So let's talk about top tier talent for a minute, because we mentioned sort of some budget constraints and some availability issues. So can you share a particular challenging situation and how you navigated it to secure that sort of level of talent for an event?
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to booking those talents, it really is about relationships. Not everyone is going to be able to navigate that space. And the best solution is to rely on someone within those contacts that has those contacts. So Nestle Live, as I mentioned, is a subdivision within Live Nation that works directly in both of those. So I think for me, it is, two sides. You mentioned the budget thing, and that is always where we start, because you're not going to get top line talent on, a small budget, but you can get a list of options, and pulling those resources. What's great is if I know somebody is going to want to book a mid to higher tier talent, that's where I rely on my partners at Nestle to send an email. They're fantastic, and just say, here's the budget, here's the date, and I can get a list of available bands within an hour. And you really, for event planners that are, we mentioned, like kind of comfortable in that space, or maybe don't have those relationships, they need to have those quick companies, and there's multiple of them out there that they can call and rely on, so they can bring in the talent and and get them secured and booked, and make sure that they're taken care of. Because when you start to go up the ladder of talent, maybe let's take Earth, Wind, and Fire, for example. They played a private event at the Aztec, and so that one comes readily to mind. They're going to have certain needs and expectations, and it might be less than if you're booking like a pit bull or something like that, but you still have hospitality needs that you're going to consider with them. You're going to have, that's going to be a big part of their rider, this kind of space that they're used to be able to have like green room space and all of that kind of stuff. So those are all the kind of challenges that when we're working with a planner, we will work through when it comes to bringing in bigger talent. And it's worth it. It can be a big draw for your event. And set your event apart where it really is that 100% concert feel with a good talent when you're bringing in those bigger artists.
Yeah. So, it's interesting that you say that that again, stepping to that knowledge gap about those requirements. But I was just sort of thinking about, the different types of riders, whether it's a hospitality rider or the technical rider or anything like that. So I think there's an opportunity there for learning on that side of the industry. And so just touching on the sort of relationship management aspect that you just mentioned, what advice would you give to new event planners looking to establish relationships and those connections into that entertainment world?
That's a good question. I mean, it really is kind of one step at a time. You can always reach out to those those new event planners. We've got Live Nation concert venues across the US. Representatives just like me can help point you in the right direction. And we're always looking to build relationships also on the other side with event planners. We work with our talent buyers that those are the ones who are going to actually booking the concerts within our venues throughout the United States. And they really, once you have a few experiences with some bands, though, a new event planner is probably going to start with the local level, right? You really only need about maybe 6 to 10 local bands with a variety of music to get started with. And a lot of them are really eager. Playing private events is much easier for a lot of bands than it is doing concerts. They can supplement in a lot of different ways. So they're happy to do special events. And so you get that local contact list to get you started. If you are looking for talent, there are some talent companies that are local that specialize in events in a lot of cities. We've got a couple around here as well. And then you get used to, as you kind of go up the tiers, and maybe you book an artist that, we mentioned Seattle, there's so many great bands up there. Maybe they are local, but they tour nationally. They've got a little bit of the bigger stage. You kind of work your way into that. But you've got to take care of the artists at the end of the day. Going back to what you mentioned about the writers is a perfect example. If you are looking to bring in a band, they are going to send you their hospitality writer and their technical writer. You're going to want to send that to whatever venue you're going to. Before you even book the band, send it to the venue, your venue contact, and say, is this something that you can accommodate? You need to know that going out of the gate, because you got to think about it like this is their craft, right? This is what they do. This is their creative outlet. So they have standards when they're going to perform somewhere, especially as you get up to the tiers. Like, look, if these are the kind of microphones that I need, this is the square footage that I need on the stage, because, when you're working with these bands, they want the audience to have a certain experience. It's their name at the end of the day. So you got to have that respect for their artistic process and their needs. And even if they are available for the day and within the budget, if you're at a venue that can't accommodate that, don't just like let your eyes glaze over with that technical writer and be like, yeah, I'm sure they can do this. Like, you really need to verify and maybe even have a walkthrough with the venue to go around and say, is this going to be, are they going to be able to give the experience to your guests that they want to give with their band?
And I like that aspect of that relationship building is multiple ways, right? So as the event planner or the organizer, yes, you're building that relationship with the artist and with the talent to understand that network. But that's only half of the relationship building. The other part of that relationship building is with the venues and with the production team and with the food and beverage team. That's where that event planner or producer ends up being that sort of conduit. And that's what, to me, that relationship building means. It's not, I'm building a relationship with you, I'm building your relationships with everybody else. And I think that's a really important thing to remember. So let's talk about return on investment. Like, how do you measure ROI for live entertainment at business events? Because I know, as we talk about budget a few times in this episode, that's the thought that's coming through in a meeting planner's head. It's like, yes, I would love the budget to afford you to come and perform at my sales kickoff, but I've got to prove the ROI on that. So is there a specific metric or some kind of feedback mechanism that you pay attention to?
I think it's important to remember that live music creates memories, and everyone's looking for a memorable event at the end of the day. It takes a lot of different aspects. It can't just be a great band. It has to be the first experience from when they walk in the door. It has to be food and beverage that's well placed and easy to get to and delicious and unique. But when you bring in a live band as a part of your event, you will instantly see how they're engaging with the audience. People will be having their phones up. They'll be recording part of the concert and the live music aspect. They're uploading it and they're adding the hashtags in for your event. Again, every event is going to be a little bit different. But if your event is based on, let's say, success for me is going to be a certain social media engagement, or success could be the number of attendees that go, maybe, hey, we put on this event, we invested into some live music for that sales kickoff, and now the attendance is up for the following year. Or if it is like, let's say it's a corporate party and we mentioned the sales aspect, that's great. So maybe it's an incentive trip. And it really is a thank you to your salespeople at the end of the day. That's not really profit margins for that event in and of itself, but you're looking for the memories that people are going to stay and their engagement they're going to have within the culture of their company. And, salespeople love to have a good time. They really do. And they love to be, to have these experiences, to be rewarded for all of their hard work at the end of the day. So it really, I think, lines up a little bit on what the strategic objectives of the events are. But bringing in live music is going to be a memorable experience that sets your event apart.
Yeah, so it's interesting that it's a longer term metric, right? Mm-hmm. And thinking about that incentive trip, and you almost have to sort of think about it in the survivor bias, that that you're not going to see that in immediate sales numbers, right? Like you bring a bunch of salespeople to this cool incentive trip, and I'm picking on you too, just because they're one of my favorite bands. Essentially, in this podcast, I'm trying to guilt them into coming and performing at my next event for free. That's just not going to happen. But, so if we put U2, like the survivor bias measurement comes out a year later, when how many people were really trying hard to get onto that incentive trip because they heard that, last year in, Puerto Vallarta, we like U2 performed. I want to, be a top achiever because I want to go see U2 and I can't wait to see who that band is going to be next year. Those kind of things. And that net promoter score are key sort of metrics that I think are kind of an easy one to see the difference of we got U2 this year and we didn't get them next year. And so we saw our net promoter score go down. So this is an obvious sign that it's worth the investment because attendees will come, the attendance and competition to come to this incentive will rise. So, is it those kind of metrics that you guys are looking at on a regular basis on a longer term relationship with an event organizer?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when it comes to those relationships with the event organizer, as you mentioned, specifically within our world, we have beautiful venues that do a couple of different things. So we're their venue contact, but then we are also quite often the contact for booking entertainment, right? And so a lot of it is, you mentioned the U2 thing. I love that. When you're looking at those metrics, you said it's a little bit further down the road as far as like excitement year over year. I think about that corporate event that we just did that had so many different entertainment aspects. This is actually an event that they do for people who would be clients of their company, right? So this is a big conference. They do it at the conference moves from city to city, and they have been now known to have the biggest blowout reception of this conference. And it's an independent reception that they host. And we literally have line down the block of people wanting to get into the venue when they hosted it here in San Antonio. And so now they're well known, and it is a sales investment for them at the end of the day. They have some employees of theirs that go, but it really is to engage their customers. And every single year they top it one up and one up and one up and one up. And not only did we, they worked with Nesty actually to book their live entertainment, and they worked in our venue. We had everything from live longhorns to beer burros to living statues to alpacas. It was like a zoo, to airless, to all of this, Jaeger shots at the end of the night because this company is founded in Germany. And that really, all these elements came together, and they at the conference next year, they're going to be like, wow, like you never know what this company is going to throw your way. But it is such a fun party, and business connections are being made and being built. And that's a good example of the kind of ROI that live music and a really well executed event start to finish can give you. And it was quite a fun event. We did, I think, you mentioned as far as corporate events, Live Nation has their conference every year for us and Urban Nation. And of course, it's kind of cheating, right? But we always have live entertainment. This last year, we had Teddy Swims perform, which was super fun. We also had, if you remember this band from the 80s and 90s, Belle Biv DeVoe, also performed line. It was so fun. I actually got a stage and I got to dance with them. They had people come up and sing with them. And again, it really created memories around live music that you just can't get every day.
Yeah, absolutely. So just quickly touching on technology in entertainment, are there any technologies that you believe are set to transform live entertainment for business events? And I'm kind of thinking of that ABBA Voyage hologram. Like, is that kind of thing getting integrated? Are you seeing a lot more of that?
I'm not seeing a lot of it just yet, but I definitely see it on the horizon. There's a lot of conversation about, those types of like technological aspects getting more and more popular. It's not like it's, say, mainstream just yet, but I do see that increasing and expanding in the coming years.
And so looking forward, do you anticipate in the role of live entertainment in business events changing?
I think the role is expanding. As I mentioned before, I think booking live entertainment in general for events has just grown over the years, just like, people wanting that interactive experience has grown over the years. I think we attribute some of it just to, the pace of society, but also just the pandemic really brought in a lot of time where people weren't interacting and weren't experiencing live events. And we've seen that hunger for those experiences redouble. You think about these corporate events, especially if you're working with a company that has hybrid or remote workers. Airbnb to me was a great example of a company that came out of the pandemic that made some strategic decisions on how they were going to work. All of their employees are remote workers, and they continue to stand by that. But they also have created little micro experiences in their regions where people are getting together as a company, and that is how they're building that culture, right? So when people they get together, they have fun. And it's not like getting together for a business meeting. It is truly a social interaction to balance all of that out. And you think about too with larger companies that are maybe coast to coast, when they have these get-togethers, they have their awards galas or they have their sales incentive, that is an opportunity for people to come together, and experiencing live music as a part of that just enhances that entire experience and helps build those connections.
That's right. And so finally, knowing that our audience is mostly event organizers and planners, what practical step would you give them to start integrating entertainment into their events?
I would say, first of all, don't be afraid of the knowledge gap if that's you. Don't be intimidated by these potential writers. Get started with building that local talent and learning how to work with the local talent. And then you can start working your way up to get those connections with talent companies that can help you book bigger talent, and just continue to ask questions. I mean, think about it. I came from a hotel world, and we would book bands on occasion, and we had an audiovisual department, but it is night and day compared to what I'm doing now. I had to learn what a backline was. I had to learn, to me, front of house meant the lobby, right? And not where the mixer goes, right? And so you just have to be open and willing to learn. But if you're an event planner that feels very strong in that area, you are going to set yourself apart from all the other event and meeting planners that maybe are a little bit more hesitant and maybe, for their proposals, let's say you're a DMC and you're competing against other DMCs to book a piece of business. And they're pitching a DJ because that's their comfort level, but you're like, look, I can bring in this talent that's going to go with this theme and really enhance your event. And here's 3 different bands that I think would work really well for that. It is a strategy to set yourself apart.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for joining me today, Sarah, on Production Value Matters. This is really great.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Have a good day.
Production Value Matters, the business event podcast, is brought to you by Byrne Production Services. To find out more about Byrne Production Services and how putting on events can drive value for your business, visit byrneproductionservices.com. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And on behalf of the team here at Production Value Matters, thank you so much for listening.